Are you thinking about getting back with your ex? It should never be, how do I get them back? It is the whys that we talked about today. Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Once again, I want to welcome back Sandy Weiner, the dating coach, relationship expert, the founder of Last First Date, and the author of Choice Points in Dating. Thank you so much, Sandy, for being here again.
Thank you for having me back, Silka.
Sandy, I'm really looking forward to our topic today. I think it's an interesting conversation, important because a lot of people go through this, and that is 5 questions to ask before getting back together with an ex. Are you in that situation? Are you thinking about getting back with your ex?
And if you are, I want you to think about what you need to ask before doing it. I think a lot of people just jump back in and they don't ask the right questions.
Number one here, the obvious, but maybe we don't think about it. Why did we break up?
Yeah. I mean, it may be obvious, but it actually may not be the same answer for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? One person may not have wanted to break up, the other one did. One person saw problems, the other ones didn't. So before you can reunite and move forward, you need to reflect on what went wrong in the first place. There were definite issues that lead to a breaking point in a relationship. So what would be different now? That's what you need to ask yourself. Have you both worked on these issues? Or the person, maybe there was only one person who had an issue. Did they go to therapy? Did they resolve the issue? If so, great. Then how would you handle things now that would be different from the last time?
Well, that leads right into to number two here, Sandy. Have I given myself enough time to process the breakup?
Yeah, so I remember having a breakup many years ago. It was one of the first people I dated after my divorce, and I missed him right after I broke up with him. And so I think I got back together with him a week later. That's not enough time. I didn't really miss him. I missed our conversations. I missed certain parts of our relationship. I missed the intimacy, but I didn't miss him because there were some major issues in the relationship. And so if you haven't had enough time to process, control that urge to just contact them. And if you're lonely or whatever it is, give yourself time and process. If you need to go to therapy or whatever it is, do you actually miss your ex? Are you just lonely and miss contact, miss the best parts of the relationship? Because the worst parts are going to come up really quickly if you don't spend enough time processing.
Um, well, and I think that might be slightly different if it's after a long time, like say after a few years, you break up. I think you need even more time to process it then, don't you?
Well, if it's after a few years, then you have to know who this person is today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like then a lot of time has passed. And so sometimes people get back together with a high school
Mm-hmm.
sweetheart in
Yeah.
their 40s or 50s or after a divorce or something. And I had that experience with a guy that I had been in love with in high school and early parts of my 20s. And we had very little in common. I mean, the beginning it was like fun to talk and have some really fun reminiscence
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't really have any bond anymore. And so we wanted to kind of explore, but I felt like I there's not enough here.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes there is though. Sometimes it becomes the most amazing relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you do have to get to know that person again.
Yeah, it's interesting that the whole Facebook, about 10, 15 years ago, I think is when we all really got into it. And for us, it was truly like a revelation because we haven't seen people from high school in so long. It's like if you just graduated, then you're on Facebook and your friends are, I mean, okay, you just saw them. But for us, that was really It's, oh my God, look at so and so. You really would have never seen these people again. And yes, there's a lot of relationships that have come, developed that way, going back to high school and having those roots. And they can be beautiful, but at the same time, anyway, there's lots of stuff to think about. But I do like the high school idea on some level.
If it works, it's
Yeah,
great. And if it doesn't work, it's because there's a lack of compatibility. And
yeah,
just having gone to the same high school and being in
yeah,
love or having a crush back then is not enough of a reason to be able to get together today. You have to
yeah,
go deeper.
yeah. Or you just realize that you missed a bullet. So
That's right. I'd be
I,
curious if anyone in our audience, if any of the listeners have had that experience. It'd be great if they shared.
that's yeah, absolutely. Please do. I have one of my closest friends. They're together back from high school, and yeah, there's lots of those stories. I would love to hear more of those stories. That would actually make a really good segment at some point.
Mm.
So number three, am I romanticizing our relationship or seeing it realistically?
People do tend to romanticize. I've had clients who've had breakups and they say, I think I'm going to reach out. And, because it's just the whole dating apps, they're just terrible. And this is the best person. And they forget all the bad things, right? It's just, oh, this person was such a good friend. But were they really? We tend to just kind of wash away all the bad stuff until we get back together. And then it's like, takes about 5 minutes for us to get right back to where we started. And so it's really important to focus on the good and the bad. I think it's easy to just look at the good and say, we had so much fun, or that person was really the one, but they weren't. And so, what was it that didn't work? Because that will stop you from romanticizing all the great things.
This topic is super interesting to me because I honestly, I once I'm done with somebody, I'm done, whether they broke up with me or I broke up with them. And when I look back on any of those relationships, I only remember the bad. Maybe that's actually a good thing. uh, I always find it interesting how all of a sudden that you remember the good. Yeah, I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I definitely don't romanticize.
I'm not a romanticizer either, but I do
Mhm.
remember when my mom's husband died, and she could only remember him as the perfect husband.
Mm,
And during their marriage, it was absolutely not that way.
yeah.
This is her second husband, and he was not the easiest person. And he
Hmm.
had Alzheimer's at the end, and it was
Mm,
really hard for her. But she remembers him as her best friend and, all the connection points, and completely forgot all
yeah.
the things she didn't like. So I see that happens a lot with death, where
Hmm.
somebody's just like, oh, they were perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of wishful thinking. Maybe we want to believe that a person was different than they were. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But I'm also very clear, like when things are over, they're usually over. It's when
Hmm.
I reconnected with that ex-boyfriend,
Hmm.
so many years had passed, and I had changed so much in terms of how I express myself
Hmm.
that I was able to talk about things that I never could talk about. Like we
Yeah.
never expressed our love to each other. I didn't know if he was
Hmm.
dating other people.
Hmm.
I didn't know if I was his first or not. He was my first. Like
Hmm.
none of that got discussed. It was
Yeah.
all like just, I hope we're both on the same page.
Yeah.
So if we have grown and changed and matured, it is
Hmm.
possible that the
Yeah.
relationship could work.
Hmm.
And so, it's not always over when it's
Right.
over.
Right. No, absolutely. I'm not saying I'm right. To me, it's just I found it interesting that the whole topic. Well, the number four, do I miss them or do I miss being in a relationship? Great question.
Yeah, a lot of times we want to have a plus one for wherever we go, and we
Hmm.
miss being part of a couple. I hear that a lot from from my clients, especially if they all their friends are coupled and
Mhm.
they feel bad being single. So
Mhm.
they're just lonely and they think they'll never find somebody again. And so they want to be back with this person. Those are not good reasons to get
Mhm.
back together with somebody. And again, something has to change in order to make it work this time around. You can't just be like, oh, well, we missed each other. And so we're going to get back together.
Right. This becomes another, I think, interesting thing to think about, because at what point maybe were you hastily exiting a relationship when you actually shouldn't have, broken up? If you go even a little bit deeper in here, this gives the opportunity to really think about, was it for the wrong reasons? Do I regret breaking up or vice versa? So it's a good question.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like if you got really angry about something and there was a misunderstanding, I mean, you see this all the time in these
Right.
drama shows that you watch on TV, that people get super mad and they don't realize that what they thought happened didn't really happen, but they never got
Right.
curious. And so if that's something that anybody can relate to, then maybe you did break up for the wrong reason. Maybe you didn't give the other person a chance to explain themselves
Hmm.
or ask for forgiveness or show you that they're sorry and make amends. I
Yeah.
mean, people have done bad things. I mean, there's
Hmm.
affairs, there's all kinds of things that can get repaired with
Hmm.
the right kind of support. So, not every breakup is permanent,
Hmm.
but if you do get back together, you don't just hope for the best. You've got to make sure that something is going to be different, whether it's about asking for forgiveness or going to a therapist or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, and that leads you to the fifth point here, number five. Finally, has anything really changed? Really think about that. Has anything changed with me or with this other person or the situation over which we split up?
Yeah. So I had a situation with a client many years ago who broke up for all the wrong reasons. And most of it was her own issues that she had to work out. She was a people pleaser. And I probably have talked about her on this show before. She never asked him for the things that were important. She made a lot of assumptions.
Hmm.
And so she would do all the driving, she would do all the gift buying, she would pay more money for things because she made more money. And then she got resentful. And this was a pattern she had to break in her life altogether. So once she did all the inner work, she realized what a gem he was and that she never talked to him about any of these things and gave him the right to decide that he was going to pay for things or that so
Yeah.
she decided to give that relationship another chance but with new agreements. And so he had been dating somebody. He immediately broke up with her because he really wanted to get back together with this woman. He had loved her.
Hmm.
And she said, I assumed that you made less money. And he said, well, I do make less money, but I actually have more money than you because I invest my money. And she didn't know that because you never talked to him about it. And so they made these new agreements and they're married today. That never would
Mm.
have happened,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So a lot of these things are about communication and how things change. So she had to do those changes for herself before coming back to him.
Again, it's an interesting topic. And I think these are great questions, fabulous questions. If you are in that situation and you're thinking about getting back with an ex, what I'd like to bring up before we end this is that there are lots of people out there, or lots of articles, even websites and YouTube channels dedicated to how to get your ex back. And I have a huge problem with that, because it is playing on somebody's pain, on somebody's longing. Obviously it's on so many people's minds. They're hurt, but it should never be, how do I get them back? It is the whys that we talked about today. And I'll throw it over to you. What would you like to add on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, this was something that came up early on in my coaching career where I would see all these articles and they were like the most popular
Mm-hmm.
websites, videos,
Yep.
articles. And it bothered me so much because of the manipulation of a
Right.
vulnerable person And you're not looking to manipulate somebody back into your life. That is
Right.
not the point. You know, it's
Right.
like a pickup artist. Sure, they
Hmm.
could use techniques to get somebody to go out with them, but does that relationship last? And
Hmm.
so I'm interested in the deeper work. I'm interested in helping people know, does this relationship have legs? Does this relationship have the potential to succeed? And are we both taking accountability for what went wrong? And have we
Hmm.
made the changes necessary to make it work this time? Whatever it is, even if you feel like you weren't the one who did anything wrong,
Hmm.
even in this situation where there's an affair, there is something that happened in that relationship that made that other person feel that they weren't going to get their needs met with you. You know, as much as you may not want to hear that, it is true. So what
Hmm.
happened to break down this relationship, and can you rebuild it?
Yeah.
That's the important thing, you know. And so, yes, a lot of relationships do really well when you reconnect if you ask the right questions and do the right work.
Great, great point. Well, we'll end it there, Sandy. As usual, we will link to all of your information. Everything will be in the show notes below. If you'd like to contact Sandy directly, last first date, she is a fabulous coach and can help you with some of these things, especially if you're stuck in the cycle, what we talked about today. And Sandy just came out with a brand new book, Love at Last. I just ordered, it's going to be here tomorrow. Can't wait to read it, Sandy. And I
Yay.
look forward to our next conversation on Second Act TV.